Part 42. Endless Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 431. Now, just as Liu Yan thought, the camp that was supposed to be the last line of defense for the kingdom's army had turned into a front-line battlefield full of smoke. The country's magician troops and soldiers fought here, and everything you could see was the brilliance of magic unfolding and the sound of bullets being fired. The camp, which originally looked deserted, is now closer to the concept of a front-line battlefield. Collapsed and disintegrated outposts, dead trees burning with blazing flames, locomotives emitting thick smoke that could leak oil and explode at any time, and the disgusting smell of blood that filled the air. The smoke rising into the sky made the already gloomy sky even more gloomy. Liu Yan did not intervene rashly in their melee. She had no idea what was going on. The army defected? If this is really the case, there is no need for Liu Yan to take the risk to help. That is their own internal problem. However, the war broke out for less than a minute, and the damage actually reached this level. Apart from high-level magic, Liu Yan could not think of any other possibility that could achieve this. This kind of high-level magic that can change the terrain environment may be able to be carried out reluctantly if it is the Blue Knight of the Vatican or the Templar Knight of the Imperial Knights. Liu Yan didn't think that high-level magic on that scale could be easily accomplished by any magician from the kingdom. Mimicry magic equipment. She could only think of the term she had heard the most recently. She had never seen that kind of thing with her own eyes, but it became a clue connecting various recent events, including the reason for Oliver's rebellion, so Liu Yan can only think of this now. She cheered up, and the ice-condensing spear was constructed with the flying ice crystal particles. Liu Yan flexed his muscles and then targeted the nearest location where the magic light erupted. She kicked off her back foot to avoid the torrential rain of magic and bullets, and nimbly used the terrain to approach her destination. There was a female kingdom magician who was building a magic circle. At first glance, Liu Yan didn't notice the appearance of a mimicry magic suit. The magician noticed Liu Yan's approach, and three half-moon-shaped magical blades that were as high as the barracks cut through the ground and rushed towards Liu Yan. Liu Yan looked at the ground and kicked her feet towards the blade. The flying ice crystal particles quietly rotated around her, and in an instant they reached a density similar to the magic power of the blade. The storm rolled up by the ice crystals was not cut open by the blade. Instead, it used high-density magic power to disperse the seemingly unstoppable half-moon-shaped magic blade. The remaining magic power completely destroyed the empty barracks behind Liu Yan. Just the aftermath has such power. But in Liu Yan's eyes, this level of magic was already common among his colleagues. The magician of the kingdom must not have thought that Liu Yan would be unable to be stopped in this way. Before she could react, Liu Yan had already flashed in front of her. She bent her knees slightly, and the handle of the ice-condensing spear sank mercilessly into the kingdom's magician's belly. No matter how powerful magic is cast, as long as there is no assistance from physical strengthening magic, the human body is fragile and vulnerable. The magic circle that released the half-moon-shaped magic blade dissipated in an instant, and the kingdom magician fell limply in front of Liu Yan with his waist hunched over. Is this the only level of mimicry magic equipment? Although the mimicry magic costume that Liu Yan originally imagined was not as good as Ika and Ling's orthodox magic costume, it would at least make him feel a little pressure. But in fact, there is no such feeling. Although the magic formula does belong to high-level magic, the density of magic particles is far from being as powerful as Liu Yan imagined. She knelt down in front of the female kingdom magician who fainted and checked her condition. The kingdom magician had strange patterns all over her body, as if some kind of power had formed a new magic circuit in her body. Could it be that's what happened? Liu Yan had no impression of this kind of magic circuit, but he could more or less deduce it based on the current situation. She recalled that during the hand-to-hand encounter that lasted less than a few seconds, her figure was not reflected in the opponent's eyes, but instead there was an emptiness that had lost focus, as if the soul was being swallowed by a mimicry magic suit. Now the royal capital is in the midst of a riot where mimicry magic costumes are eroding the entire city. The routine of anti-city magic requires the cooperation of multiple kingdom magicians. Even if the mimetic magic equipment exerts an almost miraculous effect, the required supply of magic power cannot be as endless as a real magic equipment. So where does the magic to supply it come from? The answer seems to be in front of you. This can also explain why the riot in the royal capital and the defection of the army occurred at the same time. Liu Yan probably knew what was going on, and after finding the answer, she had no reason to stay here to entangle the kingdom's magician troops. After dragging his limp body to a safe bunker, Liu Yan immediately turned around and ran back to the hut in the camp. When Liu Yan, who hurried back in a hurry, suddenly pushed open the ajar wooden door, he stood stiffly as soon as he stepped in with one foot. Inside the room was Aika, who seemed to have woken up during her absence and had already sat up from the bed. Originally, when Liu Yan left, Aika, naked and wrapped in bandages, was still lying under the quilt. Now he sat up, naturally not wrapped in a quilt, and his naked body was naturally looked at by Liu Yan, who broke in without knocking on the door. "Isn't this body very strong? You can't even tell when you're wearing clothes." Although this was the first time she saw a boy's naked body with her own eyes, Liu Yan was not so young that she would scream in panic when she saw a boy's naked body. It's just that the redness spread from her cheeks to her ears. It was not a natural reaction that Liu Yan could restrain by trying hard to restrain it. Beside Aika's bed, stood a girl whom Liu Yan had never seen before. Her long, fluffy pink hair was tied into equally fluffy twin tails. She was wearing a pink kimono that was completely incompatible with the atmosphere of the front-line battlefield. Her face didn't express her inner girlish feelings at all like Liu Yan did. Even though she was so close to the naked Aika, she just looked at Aika calmly and talked to him. Liu Yan suddenly broke in at this time, because she never thought that Aika would wake up at this time, let alone that there would be people here who were not here before. The two people who seemed to be talking looked towards Liu Yan together. Is she someone you know?" Liu Yan asked dubiously. "Yeah. I've heard from her that you're here too, thank you." Aika just said this calmly. He seemed to have noticed the posture in which he was facing Liu Yan. He put on the clothes and folded them beside the bed. When Liu Yan came to the front-line battlefield, he had already heard from Hitomi that the royal capital was in riots. When he opened his eyes and woke up, Hitomi was already standing quietly at the head of his bed. Aika was awakened by the roar of artillery fire that erupted around the camp. Originally, his injuries had recovered to the point where he would not be in a deep sleep. With the help of Hitomi's body-strengthening magic and the blood of Tairuya Senpai's vampire, his body gained extremely strong recovery ability. Liu Yan. Aika glanced at the ice coffin standing in the corner of the room. He must have known very well who was sleeping in that ice coffin. He turned his gaze back and walked to Liu Yan with heavy steps. As Aika approached, Liu Yan also raised her head slightly. She didn't know why Aika had to reluctantly get out of bed and walk towards her at this time. Then, Aika bowed her head deeply in front of Liu Yan. "I'm sorry." Liu Yan has never heard Aika's hoarse voice before. "I couldn't keep my promise, I didn't save Way 11. I don't remember when I made this promise." When Liu Yan agreed to entrust Aika to take care of Way 11, the only condition was that he must protect Way 11. Even though the time when the promise was made is no longer clear, neither party has forgotten this promise. At this time, if Liu Yan could slap him with anger, it would make Aika feel a little bit redeemed. However, even with such a cheap redemption, Liu Yan has not given it to him for a long time. Hitomi stood behind Aika, quietly listening to the conversation that only Aika and Liu Yan could understand. She didn't seem to feel as deeply about Way 11's misfortune as the two people in front of her. Liu Yan finally made a move and took a step forward. But instead of punishing Aika to vent his endless sadness, he gently hugged his deeply buried head. Wei 11 should be happy that she is not left lying there alone. Liu Yin refers to the insignificant act of Ika personally covering Wei 11's body with his windbreaker. It seemed that the person who was hurt the most at this moment was not himself, but Ika. Liu Yin just stroked his hair and said this like a comforting child in pain. After comforting Ika, Liu Yin raised his head and looked at the kimono girl standing behind him. Is this the girl in the report who hasn't been found yet? Ika then raised her head from Liu Yin's arms and walked aside to leave a place for Hitomi. She is my partner, Hitomi. The kingdom's army didn't find her, probably because she didn't stay there when I lost consciousness. To be precise, Hitomi returned to the spiritual world before the kingdom's army arrived. Hitomi didn't seem to have any intention of getting close to Liu Yin, but just bowed slightly to greet her. Tong, pupil of fiery flame. Liu Yin whispered these two names repeatedly, and immediately discovered the connection between them. Could it be that she is your magic costume? That's right. Does that mean he's the same as Xiao 11? The true identity of Liu Yin's best friend is the magic suit that lives in this world as a human being. Liu Yin has hidden secrets from her for hundreds of years. So when she realized Hitomi's true identity, she accepted Hitomi's existence faster than anyone else. After Ika woke up, the first person she saw was Hitomi. Although he was more seriously injured this time than during the Rosenberg prison robbery, he did not enter the spiritual world during his coma. When you close your eyes and open them again, you have returned from the end point where you could reach out your hand to hug Luoluo back to the starting point of nothing. Then, when Ika asked Hitomi, who knew everything about the outside world through him, about the current situation, Liu Yin rushed in rashly. Have the troops of the BZ Empire arrived nearby? The movement outside was so obvious that even the weak shed was crumbling. Anyone could guess the chaotic scene outside? It's more serious than that. Liu Yin shook his head regretfully. The magicians here who are equipped with mimicry magic equipment may all be controlled by the mimicry magic equipment. I don't know if the mimicry magic equipment has a triggering spirit attached to it. Because of magic, those people should have become the medium to provide magic power to the royal capital. In short, now they have no means to forcefully release the control of the mimicry magic equipment, they can only suppress it with force. Mimicry magic equipment. Ika, think clearly, now is not the time to stay here and slowly sort things out. Something happened in the royal capital, and there is no way they can send anyone over to take us back. If we don't take advantage of it now, if we accidentally get the airship in the camp, if it is accidentally destroyed by the internal strife of the kingdom's army, we really won't be able to go back. The royal capital. The first thing that flashed through Ika's mind was the figures of Ling and Lanming. What's going on in the royal capital now? In the short time after waking up, Hitomi just told him that Liu Yin came here alone, allowing Wei 11 to temporarily live in the ice coffin. Not long ago, the kingdom's troops had inexplicably fought with each other on their own territory. Hitomi only inferred the current situation from a few words from the outside world, so Ika could only understand this extent. That kind of thing. Liu Yin is a bit hard to talk about. Perhaps this is the so-called family scandal that should not be publicized. At this time, Hitomi intervened in a timely manner and said the unspeakable words to her. Is it because one of you betrayed me? Naturally, Hitomi would not know the reason for Orefhel's betrayal. She guessed it from Liu Yin's expression. Although on the surface, Hitomi didn't seem to care that much about the things around her, her calm eyes reflected details that were easily overlooked by people who were worried about all kinds of things. Now that Hitomi has revealed it, Liu Yin can no longer hide it from Ika. The Blue Knight and Oleafer who came here with me, now she is using the mimicry magic costume in the capital. She may have established a relationship with the Nemesis Society at some time. When he heard the name that Ika hated so much, he clenched his fists without Liu Yin noticing. Get ready to go back now. Ika immediately turned around and took off the windbreaker hanging on the wall. There should be usable airships here. Okay, but your current body. No problem. Aika took off the windbreaker and looked at it for a while. This windbreaker, which had been torn in many places, was originally covered by Wei 11's body with his own hands, but now it returned to his hands as it was, and Wei 11 lay in the ice coffin where no one could touch her. Does this count as returning to the starting point? That's not the case. If that were the case, Wei 11 should have come back. Wei 11. He tightened his grip on the windbreaker and put it on resolutely. The dark windbreaker looks like mourning clothes. Darkness can swallow up light, just as death can rob people of life. At this time, Aika's back in Tanjian's eyes revealed the same atmosphere as when she saw Logo in the Protoss Palace. Hitomi, please go back first. After we get the airship, we will listen to what you have not finished just now. Hitomi's expression didn't change because she didn't like the atmosphere. She just nodded obediently, and the pink figure quietly disappeared from the place. Then, Aika summoned the silver-white twin spears from the heraldic magic circle of the Chiz family. The beautiful gun body, dotted with light lines like petals, was now held in Aika's hand, but it was dyed with a color that made Lu Yin feel a chill. Are the kingdom's armies the only ones we have to deal with now? It looks like this. Liu Yin also held the Bingning spear with both hands, but they are just under control now, there is no need to strike too hard. Before Liu Yin finished speaking, Aika pressed down her ice spear with her hand. Liu Yin didn't know the meaning of Aika's actions, and raised her head slightly to look at his face in confusion. Leave it to me to open the way. Just focus on protecting Wei 11 and follow me. Stop messing around, Liu Yin, who finally understood what Aika wanted to do, refused without thinking too much. You just stood up with a bandage on your body, how can you rush to the front now? If I can't protect you, who else can protect Wei 11? Aika didn't give in at all, and he calmed her down with a volume no less than Liu Yin. This statement. Liu Yin flinched, more out of dissatisfaction with Aika's sophistry. It's like you admit that you can't protect Xiao 11. Aika didn't answer, silently checking the status of the silver guns. This attitude already showed that Liu Yin would not be allowed to go ahead of him this time. Knowing that no matter what, it was impossible to convince Aika, Liu Yin could only choose to give in. The ice she constructed with magic was equivalent to a part of her, and the ice coffin carrying Wei 11 left the ground regardless of gravity. I know, I will follow you to escort Xiao 11, but you must not mess with me. Liu Yin pursed her lips unwillingly, and unshed tears appeared in the corners of her eyes. And Xiao 11 will be watching you from behind. If Wei 11 were here right now, no matter what she said, she would have stopped Aika from stepping out of the room. After all, it's just a beautiful assumption. If Wei 11 was really here right now, everything here would be different. At this moment, it was only because Wei 11 could not open her hands to block Aika, and could not plead with him with tears in her eyes not to show off, that Aika was able to be so willful. I know. Aika picked up the silver-white guns that felt a little heavy for the first time in his hands. Hitomi, give me the Predator. Following Aika's request, the silvery white magic particles quietly constructed 6 floating turrets, floating silently around him. He didn't look back at the 2 people behind him, and pushed open the door of the shed without hesitation. Let's go, Liu Yin, Wuxi. And La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 432. As soon as he stepped out of the shack, he saw thick smoke rising from all directions. The orderly camp had turned into something different from the last time Aika saw it. But now they don't have time to stay here and sigh. They didn't say hello to anyone and ran directly to the camp airport where the airship was parked. The camp airport crosses the avenue that has turned into a melee battlefield, and can only be reached by passing through a tunnel across the mountain. Aika and Liu Yin, who was dragging the ice coffin, appeared in the center of the melee and were undoubtedly the most conspicuous targets. The kingdom's magician troops controlled by the mimicry magic equipment invariably regarded them as targets. When Ika and the others attracted the firepower of the kingdom's magician troops, the soldiers regarded their appearance as reinforcements and took advantage of this opportunity to launch a fierce attack. Mechanical alchemy, skeleton circuit. A silver-white exoskeleton covered Ika's body. He does not need to hide in Tibet, but walks leisurely on the central avenue where the gunfire roars. Every bullet fired from the muzzles of the silver and white guns and the magic laser of the floating turret will make the kingdom's magician permanently lose the ability to resist under another attack. At first, the magicians of the kingdom regarded Liuyan dragging the huge ice coffin as their primary target, but the weak attacks with insufficient density of magic particles were all blocked by Liuyan's ice wall. It wasn't until the controlled magicians of the kingdom realized that Ika was the most threatening person among them that they slowed down their concentrated attack on Liuyan. In the eyes of Liuyan, who was following Ika quickly, the figure of Ika now walking fearlessly in the hail of bullets looked like a reaper of death. Although Ika's attack intentionally or unintentionally avoided the vital points of the human body, it did not take away their lives. But it still made them so painful that they could no longer stand up. This back view was very different from the Ika Liuyan knew in the past. Not only did he see with his own eyes that he was now simply able to stand alone, but he felt that something he was pursuing had changed. Although he couldn't describe the weird feeling, Liuyan felt that this change didn't seem worth gratifying. In Liuyan's impression, Ika would never say anything depressing about "it can't be done" no matter how difficult it was. He would try his best to get what he wanted to catch. But he has never been so arbitrary. He will at least seek the opinions of those around him before making a decision. The last time I saw Ika was when I took them to the Holy See after smuggling into the country. Liuyan knew that the only thing they had done after that was Rosenberg's prison robbery. They lost contact with Lanming after they left Rosenberg. After only about a month without seeing her, Liuyan's perception of Ika had to change so much. To be precise, he was forced to change by what he did. In addition to Lugo's departure without saying goodbye and Wei 11's unfortunate departure, how many other things he didn't know were weighing on him. Thinking about these things while running, when Liuyan came to his senses, he had already followed Ika and left the central avenue where the melee was the fiercest. This is a military tunnel leading to the camp airport. The entrance to the dark tunnel is lined with iron fences and other obstacles. It seems that they were hastily arranged when the melee broke out. Ika raised his gun and destroyed these brittle paper-thin obstacles in one fell swoop. The guard post at the entrance of the tunnel was empty, which was already expected. It would be abnormal if someone wanted to hide in a traffic artery when the melee broke out. Ika and Liuyan walked into the dark tunnel. Even the impulsive Ika slowed down because there might be enemies coming from the camp airport on the other side of this tunnel. Although there are traces of people once staying in the empty tunnel, it seems that they have all dispersed now. The footsteps of the two people echoed in this empty space. Liuyan, who was walking behind Ika, raised his head and glanced at the figure in front of him. He pursed his lips and seemed to want to say something, but he didn't say anything. Ika, who was walking in front, seemed to be aware of the resentment Liuyan was holding in his chest. He turned his head and glanced behind him from the corner of his eye. At that time, Liuyan's attention was focused on the surroundings of the tunnel, and he did not notice Ika's gaze looking over. "Why not use Yggdrasil?" At this time, Hitomi's voice asked softly in Ika's mind, drawing his attention back. This should have been the first method Ika considered. As long as you use the ancient aviation magic ship that can reach the border of the Tiburai kingdom from the territory of the gods in 2 or 3 days, it doesn't even take 10 minutes to get back to the capital from here. Now is not the time to abuse your power, Ika just answered her calmly. "Don't worry, I will use it when it needs to be used." Hitomi didn't speak again. Even Ika himself had never thought that he would be so calm now. Seeing Komaka snatching Lugo from his hand again, he did not reach out to snatch her power back. seeing Wei 11 fall at Weir's feet until the last moment of her life. Perhaps because I lost so many things that I should have held tightly in my hands, my final goal became incredibly simple and direct. That is to directly destroy the Nemesis Society and it will be over completely. Very simple reason. Now that someone related to them appears in his field of vision, he should defeat her, and then find the roots of the Nemesis Society from her. Without the premise of failure, he will not allow himself to fail. Once the roots of the Nemesis Society were found there, they were uprooted. Ika has not forgotten his agreement with Lan Ming. He will also help Lan Ming regain the BZ Empire as promised, but now he is no longer ranked first. They all occupy a pivotal position in Ika's heart. At this moment, Ika felt a sense of relief that she had never felt before. This is all because Lugo and Wei 11 are no longer with him. What's with this attitude of viewing them as a burden? What I feel after losing them is deep sadness, rather than this inexplicable sense of relief. Ika didn't think clearly. This kind of mentality is not actually an illusion caused by relief, but rather giving up thinking in order not to be overwhelmed by the overwhelming sadness, and only spurring the body to move for the sake of pure goals. For the first time, he knew that when humans give up thinking, action becomes so simple. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. And La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 433. The royal capital was supposed to be the last piece of pure land in the Tiburai kingdom, but now it has fallen into a situation that is far more chaotic than the front-line battlefield. The streets have been completely invaded by emerald green plant vines. As the largest and most functional central city in the Tiburai kingdom, the royal capital was destroyed like a model toy by the plant vines that emerged from the ground. Thick plant vines destroy the concrete skeleton and wrap around the outside of the building like an infinitely long python. The twisted body willfully transform the orderly building complex into the same twisted form. The streets eroded by the blood-sucking thorns growing from the vine bodies were already deserted. To be precise, there is no one left alive. Those flesh and blood that could once be called human beings are now entangled by blood-sucking thorns and their original appearance is no longer visible. It turned out to be like this. Within just a few minutes of the riot by the mimicry, this street was already shrouded in the breath of death. Ever since Oleafer's mimicry magic outfit was activated, the magic power fluctuations from her filled the entire royal capital. Even Lan Ming couldn't track her, which made it even more difficult for Ling. Where is that guy? At this moment, Ling's body sounded a warning signal, and she swung the red gold sword horizontally without thinking. The handle of the knife gave back the feeling of actually hitting something. Where there was no one at all, there were crudely made steel and iron pillars. The light flame sword that Ling raised defensively did not cut away the opponent. She immediately followed the returning force of the blade to distance herself. The camouflage was exposed, and it looked like a steel giant made of various materials found on the street. There were footsteps again from behind. Ling was wary of the steel giant and glanced in the direction of the sound. That was a man wearing the uniform of a kingdom magician. Ling had seen his colleagues in the palace before, so he recognized the other person's identity at a glance. Another man dressed as a kingdom magician also walked out from behind the Iron Giant. It seemed that he should be the operator of the Iron Giant. It seemed that they all regarded Ling as their enemy. But Ling recalled the king's previous attitude, and it seemed that the sudden attack on her was not the king's intention. The situation is not good. They are all ordinary people, so you shouldn't be able to do anything, right? Nonsense, even if you don't say it, I know something is wrong. Ling reluctantly used the physical strength gained after freeing the light flame sword to dodge the Iron Fist's direct attack, and at the same time slashed the light flame sword lengthwise without any effort. The red gold slashing trajectory of the mechanical arm, which was as thick as a palace stone pillar, detached itself from its limbs. The robotic arm fell to the ground with a loud noise and dust, creating exaggerated cracks on the asphalt road. But the failure of the Iron Giant did not deter those kingdom magicians. The kingdom magician in the opposite direction took advantage of the moment when Ling jumped up and shot a ray of light similar to Ika's predator from some kind of jewelry worn on his fingertips. The radiance of magic solidified in the air for several seconds. Although Ling didn't know what kind of magic it was, there was no need to think too much about the fact that it would be bad just to brush against such a high-density magic attack. What the hell are mimicry magic costumes? There are so many tricks they can do. While Ling was complaining about dealing with weird magic that he had never heard of, he was paying attention to the opportunity to get close to the kingdom's magician with keen eyes. As long as the holders of the mimic magic equipment are defeated, they can be blocked from providing magic power to the mimic magic equipment. The rules they discovered in the God Clan's territory should be effective except for the abnormal individuals held by Oleafer. Regardless of the casualties, I can solve this situation with 3 strikes, 5 strikes, and 5 divided by 2. If only it were as simple as you say. Ling and Guanjun's sword can only talk about it, otherwise they can easily level the street with the element control after liberation. But that was naturally impossible. Ling's hands were not bound by the shackles of life, so she couldn't do it at all. A year ago, when I first met Liuyan in Pufa town and met for a decisive battle in the wasteland outside the town, the red gold blade was stained red by her blood, and Ling's hands holding the handle of the blade couldn't stop trembling. After that time, Ling clearly understood his strength. There is no doubt that this hesitation will become a fatal weakness in a real battle that requires life and death. But Ling only accepted his weakness. Moreover, the mimicry magic equipment used by these kingdom magicians is completely different from the oppression of the steel dragon controlled by Mish and Komaki when they confront Mish and Komaki in the territory of the gods. Maybe this is the performance of the mass-produced version. If they can really mass-produce that snake-like thing, the cost can easily maintain the operation of a country. No matter how powerful the mimicry magic equipment is, if the holder himself is too weak, he will be vulnerable in Ling's eyes. Although the Iron Giant always attacks with a surging momentum that wants to defeat Ling in one fell swoop, in fact, its range of activities is very limited. It is obviously to protect its operator, the kingdom magician hiding behind it. The Iron Giant smashed down the remaining arm again. This time, Ling did not raise his sword to block or dodge sideways. Instead, he used the power of his legs to seize the timing of the powerful fist's landing and pass by, jumping onto the thick mechanical arm. This moment is like a replay of the battle at the steel factory. Ling chose the most dangerous and safest place as the breakthrough point. But this time the opponent is not wearing scales as hard as diamond. Ling took a deep breath when her feet landed on the ground, then held it in, and then took advantage of the momentum along the robotic arm. After climbing onto the shoulders of the Iron Giant, this was already the highest point that Ling could reach with just quick attacks, but it was still far from the highest point that she could reach. When Ling suddenly resorted to such a nearly sacrificial attack, even the kingdom magician who controlled the Iron Giant seemed not to have expected her to use this approach. However, when his eyes finally caught up with the running golden figure, she had already appeared in the gloomy sky. She didn't even have time to order the Iron Giant to regroup. She had already performed a graceful maneuver in mid-air, using the acceleration superimposed when she fell to split the Iron Giant's huge head in two. The golden trajectory once again outlined a beautiful and glorious trajectory when it landed. The figure of the blonde girl, like the military angel Michael, became the last memory of the magician of the kingdom. Ling used the back of the knife. The other kingdom magician who was watching from the sideline seemed completely unmoved by their weakness. He had already raised his hand before Ling turned around and locked Ling with the jewelry-shaped mimicry magic equipment in his hand. However, before the remaining magicians of the kingdom could take action, the mimicry magic equipment in their hands was destroyed by some force and turned into ashes. Not only was the person in front of Ling, she felt that the waves of mimicry magic equipment gathering nearby also disappeared at the same moment. Resonance and harmony, Lanming and Zilong Melting Gold have regained control over the flow of magic in the entire royal capital. In addition to the mimicry magic equipment held by Oleophil that has assimilated the entire royal capital, the movements of the kingdom's magicians equipped with ordinary mimicry magic equipment are all under Lanming's control. The venue had changed its responsibilities at this time and turned into a command post for controlling the crisis in the royal capital. This place has been protected by an indestructible barrier set up by the Tiburai kingdom, and the top brass of the Tiburai kingdom have basically gathered here. While the work was being carried out in an orderly manner in the Tiburai kingdom, Lanming immediately began to monitor the mimicry magic equipment circulating in the capital. Orfeel unfolded the mimicry magic outfit that assimilated the entire royal capital. The integrated magic power fluctuation still existed and was gradually expanding. And hidden in such huge magic power was the ordinary mimicry magic outfit. The magic power fluctuates, and the spots are scattered all over the capital. The direction of the magic power of those mimicry magic equipment is very strange, as if it branches off and flows together to a certain place. Lanming could only know so much now. She couldn't figure out what this weirdness meant. Although he didn't know whether rashly destroying the mimicry magic equipment would cause harm to the holder, Lanming couldn't bear to be soft at this time. Sorry. Her responsibility is to serve as Ling's backup and help her find the mastermind Oleofer amid the fluctuating frenzy covering the entire city. Behind Lanming, the king had quickly re-established order in the Tiburai kingdom, and issued instructions to the soldiers remaining in the capital and the magicians who had not been corrupted by the mimicry magic costumes to assist the people in evacuating. Excuse me, where else can there be a place with barrier protection like this? Lanming participated in the command while maintaining the candle dragon's molten gold. As you can see, it is difficult for solid buildings to withstand the attack of the mimicry magic equipment. Attack. Before we figure out the nature of the mimicry magic equipment, please try to let the citizens enter the protection range of the barrier. All shelters that deal with special disasters have set up fixed barriers. It's wartime now, and all shelters have been repaired. However, the barriers are just regular magic ones, and they may not be able to face an attack of this level. It's a bit difficult. The only place left is the Tiburai Royal Academy, which is the most developed research institute for magic technology in our country. The kingdom of Tiburai has been in civil strife for a long time. Magic and technology did not merge in this country, but formed two different forces with their own opinions. Under such conditions, the Tiburai Royal Academy, the only one that abandoned prejudice and actively communicated and studied with Shijizuki Academy, naturally represented the most cutting-edge power of the Tiburai kingdom. Then please arrange for the residents around Tiburai Prince Academy to choose their first. There will definitely not be room for the entire city's residents, and everyone else will be arranged nearby. Even regular magic spells are relatively safer than hiding in a room. Lanming even gave instructions to the kingdom's army more crisply and neatly than the king, and he couldn't find anything unreasonable at all. After the king expressed his approval without hesitation, the task of assisting people to evacuate was smoothly assigned. After Lanming was sure that he had completely deprived the holders of the mimicry magic equipment who were trying to get close to Ling of their abilities, he walked towards the gate of the venue alone. Your Excellency Yila, where are you going? The king probably saw Lanming's intention, but still asked politely. Through the vision of resonance and homology, Lanming has now found Ling's location. I have to go to Miss Ling. The Knights of the Holy See may not be a strong enemy that she can deal with alone. My magic costume can only control the state of the light flame sword, and I can't see her fighting for us with my own eyes. I can't continue like this. Stay in the safest place calmly and calmly. Long before entering the kingdom of Tiburai, Lanming was already prepared to deal with this situation at any time. So what she wore was not a luxurious and heavy dress, but something light and yet elegant. It was a short missy shawl coat that matched her long violet hair, paired with a black and white plaid knee-length skirt and lace-up short boots that highlighted the curves of her legs. He didn't deliberately whitewash it, but at this time Lan Ming attracted more attention than anyone else in the venue. Not only her innate elegance, but also her youthful vitality that can light up a beacon of hope in the hearts of people who are trapped in despair. The king just smiled. He was not prepared to use protecting her personal safety as a reason to prevent Lan Ming from leaving the safest place in the capital at this time. He also knew that no one here could stop Lan Ming. I will arrange for people to send you there. Others will have to evacuate the people and may not be able to provide you with assistance in time. But as the king of the Tiberai kingdom, I implore you to defeat the rebels of the Holy See and take back the royal capital. You must know that being able to accept such a commission from the king of a country is equivalent to declaring the right to hand over the royal capital. This also shows that the Tiberai kingdom has really gradually entered a dead end during the war, and there is no chance of a comeback with their own strength. If we don't do this, we won't be able to take a step forward. Lan Ming smiled fearlessly. It seemed that what she was about to step into was not a battlefield, but a playground full of illusions and dreams. She does not need the governance power of King Tiberai's capital, she just wants to take a step forward with her own power. That's all. It had never occurred to me to do such a seemingly impulsive thing in the past. But ever since I met that incredible boy, this kind of moment seems to have become routine. So, can he abandon the reserve of Her Royal Highness and make some changes with his desired identity of Lan Ming? Lan Ming just wanted to know this. End La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 434. There were indeed enemies ambush in the mountain tunnel as Ika expected, but it was more like an unexpected encounter than an ambush. This is the main road connecting the center of the camp and the temporary airport. The magician troops and soldiers stationed here also clashed like the outside world. However, Ika only met a few lone kingdom magicians, which can be regarded as the lowest level of threat. Ika accurately hit the opponent's wrist with the gun barrel in his left hand. The long sword-shaped mimicry magic suit in his hand was thrown into the air. Ika's right hand hidden in front of his abdomen pulled the trigger and destroyed it with one shot. But without retracting his left hand, he knocked away the opponent's mimicry magic equipment and then used the butt of the gun to sink deeply into his abdomen. After a dull hitting feeling, the kingdom magician finally lost consciousness. The last one, done. The silver-white twin guns turned into silver-white magic particles and dissipated in the dim space, becoming a scenery that may only be seen this once in this place. Liu Yan never participated in the battle, but watched with mixed emotions as Ika fought through all the obstacles. As a Blue Knight who has been on the front line for a long time, Liu Yan never knew that he would be so nervous and uneasy just watching other people fighting in front of him while doing nothing himself. The tunnel, which was originally carved out of the mountain, was already crumbling under the fierce fighting. Ika, do you want to take a rest here first? No, we won't last long here. Ika raised his head and looked at the front of the tunnel with flickering lights. From time to time, gravel fell from above his head. In the process of fighting those lonely kingdom magicians just now, it is not surprising that the tunnel, which was already fragile, would collapse at any time. Liu Yan couldn't find any other reason to persuade him to stop, so he could only keep his mouth shut. Ika had already taken the lead into the depths of the tunnel, and she had no choice but to speed up and follow. There were no signs indicating the direction here. Fortunately, Ika had passed by here before to get to the center of the battlefield, so he could find the correct direction in the intricate tunnels. The last time he passed by here, Ika had never thought that the road the two of them had traveled together had now returned here alone. The front of the mountain tunnel lit up with a pure white light that was different from the candle light. I'm going to walk out of here soon. Fresh air flows in from the outlet. Standing at the exit of the mountain tunnel, the camp airport where the kingdom's army airships are parked is right in front of them. However, dead human corpses can be seen everywhere in the camp airport, including army soldiers and kingdom magicians. It seems that Ika and the others had already experienced a cruel internal fight before they came here. Even Liu Yan, who often saw blood during missions, couldn't help but cover his mouth in front of the scene where life was like a dandelion withering in the wind at any time, suppressing the nausea that wanted to vomit. She was just a girl who had been through slightly more battles than the others. Even though I have carried out several scenes that can be called cruel, I have never seen such a scene of wantonly trampling on life. Ika didn't seem to be shaken by the scene in front of him, but as if he didn't see the human corpse lying at his feet, he walked straight towards the military airship parked on the apron. Liu Yan paid attention to his feet, carefully walked around the corpse at his feet, and followed Ika closely around the road. It seems it's still usable. Ika roughly checked the control panel of the airship. Liu Yan, come up. Liu Yan stepped on the steps that were a bit high for her to board the airship, and then let the ice coffin carrying Way 11 lie across the center of the narrow cabin. Ika adjusted the parameters on the console, set it to automatic driving, with the royal capital displayed on the map as the maximum speed in the forward direction, and finally pressed the OK button. The ladder extending downward folded and retracted, the hatch closed with intermittent mechanical noises, and the molecular power furnace inside the airship began to operate. Ika walked down from the console and came to Way 11's ice coffin. Liu Yan was now slumped on the edge of the ice coffin. The reason why he could not care about the status of the airship was because he still had Hitomi's ancient aviation magic ship Yggdrasil as a last resort. Even if they lost the airship midway, they could escape. Hearing the footsteps approaching, Liu Yan raised his head and looked at Ika, who was looking down at them. This ice coffin is not transparent, so no matter how hard you look, you can't see Way 11's figure. At this moment, what exactly is reflected in Ika's eyes? At this time, Hitomi walked out from behind Ika without making any sound. She wasn't here when she just boarded the plane, was she? At first Liu Yan was frightened by her silent appearance and disappearance, but after seeing it once, she somehow got used to it quickly. Hitomi, let's continue. Ika's eyes did not leave Way 11's ice coffin. It is safe here for the time being. You said before that there is something you must tell me. Yes, Hitomi also came to Way 11's ice coffin, but what was reflected in her eyes was Ika's figure. Although I think it is necessary to inform the master immediately, the situation was urgent at that time and it was not convenient to explain in detail. The most important thing is clear now, right? No, Hitomi firmly rejected what Ika took for granted. If I informed the master of this fact when I broke through the enemy's formation, the master might change the itinerary. Because of this, I didn't say anything. These words sounded a bit meaningless, and the conversation between Ika and Hitomi didn't seem to go together at all. Ika finally moved her gaze to Hitomi in confusion, and Liu Yan's gaze also fell on Hitomi. They are now thousands of meters high in the sky, heading towards the royal capital that is currently being swallowed by the mimicry magic equipment. Ika's only thought was how to find the lair of the Nemesis Society from the Society's minions who finally appeared. Hitomi's hesitant statement attracted the attention of everyone here, but she just blinked her eyes that exuded a faint ethereal spirit as if no one was watching. Snow Tide Chi has not stopped functioning, she said as a matter of course, as if it were a lie. Using human thinking, she is currently in a state of deep sleep. Endless Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 435. After Ling and Lan Ming, who was far away, worked together to deal with the kingdom magicians who were controlled by the mimicry magic equipment in the royal capital, they immediately started searching for Oleafer's movements again. But Orfeel herself is not a magic costume holder, and the mimicry magic costume she holds is of an abnormal type. Even Lan Ming couldn't find her location based on the magic power fluctuations, let alone Ling. The streets were now in chaos again, and the noise from other neighborhoods was faintly transmitted to Ling. Probably other places have not been eroded by those blood-sucking thorns, and the kingdom's army will probably not leave the people alone. What is Olive's purpose in doing this? He used the mimicry magic equipment that nearly destroyed the entire royal capital, but avoided a direct confrontation with himself and Lan Ming. Then her purpose would not be to defeat herself and Lan Ming to seize the magic equipment, but maybe to attract someone's attention, which is why she created such a big commotion. In this case, Ling immediately ran to a nearby place with a wide view and looked for the most conspicuous building in the royal capital. Then she found a multi-cylinder structure, with several spherical spires connected by giant pillars and beams, pointing straight into the sky like the sword of Damocles. If Ling's guess was correct, Oliefel would definitely be in that place now. At this time, the sharp sound of tires sounded not far from Ling, and a military motorcycle stopped at the corner of the street. Ling. Ling immediately recognized the owner of the call. She didn't expect Lan Ming to come here in person. The blood-sucking thorns that eroded the streets returned immediately after the battle. Ling ran towards the military motorcycle parked at the corner of the street, cutting off the blood-sucking thorns extending towards her. At the same time, the other two kingdom soldiers on the motorcycle also used the car door as a cover to shoot at the blood-sucking thorns surrounding Ling. Under the onslaught of double firepower, Ling escaped the siege of the blood-sucking thorns without any damage. At the same time as Ling got on the car, the kingdom soldier who had already started the engine of the motorcycle stepped on the accelerator. The scenery outside the car window flew away, and the blood-sucking thorns did not catch up. At this time, Ling could finally lean on the back of the rear seat and take a breath. I can probably guess where Oliver is now. I'll explain it later. Do you know where that tall-looking spire is? After listening to Ling's description of the spire, the two kingdom soldiers in the front seat knew that they knew such an iconic building. That's the broadcast tower of our royal capital. The magic signal covers the royal capital and satellite cities. It's also a tourist attraction. Please take us to that spire. Orefiel might be there right now. New. The mission of the kingdom soldiers this time is to escort the two girls. No matter where they go, the two kingdom soldiers will risk their lives to accompany them to the end, all in order to save their country together. As the military locomotive drove its powerful horsepower and turned left and right between the streets, everyone in the car heard about Ling's guess. Is it to attract someone's attention? That may indeed be the case. Lan Ming also felt that this possibility that Ling thought of was more likely due to such a grand and unintentional attempt to seize their magic equipment. But I still can't figure it out. Oliver is the Blue Knight of the Holy See, and he is the one who pays the most attention to the Pope, right? Has he not noticed at all that Oliver has betrayed the Holy See? Originally, we have considered that the forces of the Nemesis Society have infiltrated into the Bis Empire. It is not surprising that even the Holy See has been infiltrated by them. Lan Ming was not sure. It is not yet certain that Oliver is a traitor. If she only has her own purpose, but her heart is towards the Holy See, it is generally difficult for such a person to reveal her flaws. Ling didn't ask any more questions and just waited quietly to arrive at her destination. Until Orpheus says it himself, all speculations can only remain at the level of guessing. Way 11. I still have some questions about that matter. Ling continued to mention the question that he had not heard the answer to before. Lan Ming, you already know that Way 11, like Hitomi and Guang, can be like us in this world. The magic suit of life, right? By the way, I heard about it from Shimazuki Academy before. That was after everyone rescued Lan Ming from the Rosenberg underground prison and returned to Xuanjiao Academy. In order to awaken Ika, who was overloaded with the two-body magic suit, Lan Ming used the ability of the Candle Dragon to melt gold to synchronize the magic fluctuations of Way 11 and Tong. Way 11's departure made Ling feel more confused than sad. Lan Ming asked in confusion. Way 11's true identity is Ika's contract magic outfit. I already know this, but does this mean anything? Although Way 11 has completely adapted to the world here, she was essentially born from the world over there like Hitomi and Hikari. In this case, does the magic suit really have the concept of death? Or is it just what about the world over there where consciousness is imprisoned just like the last time we came back from Rosenberg? You are indeed the master I recognize. As they spoke, golden particles gathered between them sitting by the car windows on both sides and transformed into the figure of a black-haired girl. The two kingdom soldiers driving the motorcycle in front seemed not to have noticed the strange changes in the back seat. Now they were doing their best just to drive the military motorcycle to avoid the people who were grouping together to seek refuge. Miss Guang. Do you mean to admit that I guessed it right? This time Ling did not accuse Guanjun Sword of suddenly appearing without saying hello, but just asked closely, so what is Wei 11's situation now? I think you two should first understand where the magic costume came from. Once you understand that, it will be much easier to explain. First of all, how much do you know about Yggdrasil? Yggdrasil, isn't that the name of Ika's aviation magic ship? I'm referring to the Yggdrasil that currently exists in this world. In your world, it should be called the World Tree now, right? Are you talking about the World Tree in the Central Sea area? Lan Ming, who was knowledgeable, immediately understood what the light flame sword was pointing to. I remember that it should be a warcraft located outside the 5th level. There is no method now. There is even less information about it within the sea area where it is located. The World Tree is a mysterious life form that has stood in the Central Sea since the existence of the continent. Because it continuously radiates a large amount of magic power to the surroundings, the floating islands and sea areas surrounding the World Tree are rich in vitality. The appearance of the World Tree is that of a giant tree with a trunk whose maximum diameter is comparable to that of a medium-sized city in the empire. It is rooted in the deep sea, and its height cannot be surveyed because it exceeds the maximum height of an aviation-guided ship. The origin of the name of the World Tree has been unclear. Its body is also protected by an isolation ending that is different from the ruins. There is still no way to approach within a kilometer radius of the World Tree. After discussions among scholars, World Tree was determined to be a type of warcraft. After the cross-border war, the Bis Empire and the Elf tribe had studied it, but in the end they dropped it. So the real name of the World Tree is Yggdrasil. Ling murmured and repeated these two nouns. Ika's aviation magic ship also has that name. After all, Hitomi gave it to him. Whether humans regard Yggdrasil as a magical beast or not, but for us magic equipment. The Sword of Light temporarily interrupted Ling's thinking. She discovered it in order to answer Ling's initial confusion. Here, she is our mother, the source of the world. From Guan Yanjian's mouth, he slowly revealed the truth about where the magic outfit came from. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Endless Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 436. This is the first time I've heard of that World Tree, Liuyan, do you know? I seem to have heard this name somewhere before, but I don't have a deep impression. From Hitomi's explanation, Ika only understood that the World Tree she mentioned was the source of the birth of the magic suit. I asked Liuyan, and she shook her head as if she didn't understand. No matter what the World Tree is. Hitomi, do you mean that as long as we bring Wei 11 to the World Tree, we can rescue her? To be precise, it's not rescue, but awakening. Wei 11 is not really dead. Even if this is just an unfounded speculation, I hope it can come true. And Hitomi appears here just to put the evidence in front of Ika and Liuyan. Ika and Liuyan were not as keenly aware of the concept of magic equipment being alive as Ling, or it could be said that the successive blows prevented them from calming down to think. Hitomi glanced at the ice coffin without trace, and continued to explain to Ika and Liuyan. When this world was born, the World Tree already existed as the foundation in the center of this world. Her foundation constitutes the context of this world. Understood in human terms, it is the direction in which magic power gathers and disperses. I do seem to have heard these words somewhere. Liu Yin recalled, it seems that a bard described them. Bards are reciters who record the passage of hundreds of years and sing the praises of an era. The foundation of the world tree can both maintain the operation of this world and destroy it. During the cross-border war, magic bursts from all over the world disrupted the foundation of the world tree. The continent was torn apart, and withered leaves flew everywhere. Traveling to various regions of the world, the areas where fallen leaves are obtained form what humans call ruins, and we are the fallen leaves that give the magic power of the Yggdrasil to the ruins. In that case, your mother should be the world tree instead of the relic. Relics were established after being endowed with the power of the world tree. For us, understanding it in a human way of thinking, relics is similar to the meaning of hometown. The ruins scattered around the world have been considered the place where magic equipment was born since the cross-border war. Because most magic costumes come from relics with special powers, there does not seem to be any contradiction in this hypothesis. Hitomi's explanation is not that difficult to understand. She had explained from the very beginning that as long as Way 11 was brought back to the origin of the magic costume, she would be able to wake up from her current slumber. This is why I think the master may change the itinerary for the Snow Tide G. If the master finds a way to awaken the Snow Tide G, he will definitely hesitate about which side has priority. There is no need to hesitate at all. If there is a way to wake Way 11 up, I will definitely make it happen for her. But the master's strongest wishes are otherwise. Hitomi, who knew everything in Aika's heart, allowed him to lie, but no one could lie naturally after being stared at by her with such clear eyes. Aika is no exception. Even if Xuechaoziji continues to sleep, it will not have any impact on her body. Hitomi gently poked the corner of the ice coffin with the tip of the paper umbrella in her hand. Until now, she has not shown any affection for Way 11. Attitude, but I don't want you to continue to misunderstand me. Because I once promised Xuechaoziji that I would help her at this time. When did Way 11 and Hitomi make such an agreement? Only Aika knows this answer. But this is not all of that agreement, it can only be called an additional condition of that agreement. Only Way 11 and Tong knew the secret. Hitomi, how far is the world tree from here? At the current rate, it won't get there even if it takes 10 times as long. What if it's Yggdrasil? The current speed can be increased by more than 10 times, but the opportunity that the owner wants to seize may be lost. Hitomi closed her eyes and answered him slowly. Not only Hitomi, but also Liu Yin could tell what Aika was thinking. Aika, do you want to go find that world tree now? To be honest, Liu Yin was eager to hug Way 11 who woke up even just for a second earlier. But although the method of awakening Way 11 sounds simple, it is definitely not a miracle that can be achieved easily. Orfeel is currently putting the royal capital, which is about to arrive, into dire straits. If Way 11 is really just sleeping as Tong said, the answer seems to be already available on which one is more serious. Aika pondered for a while, took a deep breath, and then slowly exhaled. Liu Yin, can Wuxi leave it to you temporarily? Liu Yin, who knew what this sentence meant, was finally able to frankly breathe a sigh of relief. Before Xiao 11 wakes up, I will definitely protect her from any harm. Liu Yin firmly promised Aika, although you said you were temporarily entrusting Xiao 11 to me, do you want to hand her over later? Here you go, I'm going to think about it again. To be honest, this time, I'm a little worried about you. Liu Yin was not worried that Aika would be displeased by saying this, she had to tell the truth. It wasn't because Aika didn't protect Way 11, but because of his impulsive back reflected in Liu Yin's eyes after receiving successive blows. Sorry to disappoint you. I don't know if Aika understood why Liu Yin felt disappointed. In short, he did not deny his failure. He just looked at the passing clouds outside the window of the airship as he spoke. Even so, I still have to find the Nemesis Society. It hasn't turned into the worst outcome now, and it can't change the fact that that bastard Veer hurt her. And they snatched Lolo from my hands twice, this debt must be repaid. Ika. So, I will not think that their crimes can be reduced because of this result. As long as they hurt my family, I will let them personally atone for it no matter where they are hiding. The anger in Ika's heart will not be extinguished easily. As long as Way 11 has not woken up, Logo has not returned, and the hidden dangers of the Nemesis Society have not been eradicated, he will not stop. Endless Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 437. The tallest broadcast tower building in the capital has been covered with thick emerald green vines, but it has not yet tilted under the support of the Optimus Prime. Oliver stood on the top of the tower without any shelter, holding the hilt of the rapier hanging on his waist with his right hand, staring at the royal capital that was already filled with emerald green magic products in his field of vision. Even if you do this, you still won't come to see me. Her murmurs were drowned in the roaring winds under the howling gloomy sky at the top of the tower. At this time, the sound of multiple footsteps walking on cracked tiles came from behind her. Oliaphil didn't think too much, maybe the people from the royal capital were catching up. She turned around while stroking her hair that was blown by the wind. But when he saw the tall figure, Oliver's disappointed expression suddenly brightened. It was obviously the person he had been thinking about just now, but when he actually appeared in front of him, he was very surprised. Senior Girly. Hey, Oliver. The tall figure who climbed to the top of this minaret was a middle-aged man wearing beachwear, flat slippers, and a wide-brimmed leather hat on a June day when it might rain at any time. He was not at all moved by the dilapidated environment at the top of the tower, as if he came here just to see Orefhel and casually raised his hand to say hello. When Oliver saw the middle-aged man, she only showed surprise with her mouth slightly open. After the middle-aged man called her name in a familiar voice, Oliver woke up as if from a dream. She did not hesitate to use the capital of the Tiberai kingdom as a sacrifice, in order to make him notice that the person she was here was none other than Girly, the predecessor of the Holy See in the past. Senior Girly, you finally. Oliaphil's gloomy expression swept away, and a happy smile appeared on her delicate cheeks. However, after seeing the girl coming out from behind Girly, Oliver's expression suddenly became much stiffer. Until just now, Oliver's attention had been completely attracted by the dreaming Girly, and he completely ignored the girl next to him with messy silver-gray slightly curly hair who looked about the same age as Way 11. Such a petite girl stood next to the burly and muscular Girly, just like Beauty and the Beast, revealing a sense of harmony amidst the incongruity. Excuse me, who is she? Should I introduce her as my other daughter? Girly generously touched the girl's head with his rough hands. Her name is Ya, and she comes from a slum like you. Orfeel silently took out the thin sword from his waist. It seems that I was abandoned by Senior Girly. Seeing this, Yaya, who had been watching Orefhel, broke away from Gilai's touch, and bright red claws extended from her fingertips. A race that can freely control magic power as thick as blood, and anyone with a little knowledge can see through Miyabi's identity at a glance. It turns out she's not human. The aliens in the slums are all abandoned children and exiles who entered the country illegally. Shouldn't Senior Girly hand her over to the local law enforcement bureau? Orfeel pointed straight at Miyabi's rapier and a blue magical light flowed through it. Unlike the emerald green magic power of the mimicry magic costume, Orfeel's own magic power is the same color as her eyes. Or, Senior Girly, am I not enough? Orfeel, I have wanted to tell you for a long time that you have never understood me. Even though Orfeel showed obvious hostility towards Ya's existence, Girly remained unmoved and just talked about what Ya didn't know in a hurry. Only Gree himself and Orfeel could remember it. The past. I didn't leave the Holy See because you were too weak. As for why I took the blame and resigned after the failure of that mission, it was not to protect you. It can only be said that I happened to have decided not to do it at that time. I just found a suitable reason to quit. As he spoke, Gurley took out a cigarette from his beachwear and lit it leisurely. It seems that on some days when he was not drinking, he fell into the bad habit of smoking. Perhaps it was Gurley's words that brought back Oliver's memories, as the blue eyes that looked at Gurley showed complicated emotions. Gurley held the cigarette in the corner of his mouth, took a deep breath, then held the cigarette between his fingers and blew out a thin stream of smoke. When you were young, I took you out of the slums, became your guardian, and helped you find a place in the Holy See. I have watched you grow up to this day. I have never thought that I did something wrong. Looking at you now, you have changed, being so beautiful and reaching my previous position. If you think about it this way, I should be considered a successful and good father, right? Gurley laughed cynically while holding a cigarette in his mouth. Ya looked up at her adoptive father in confusion and said something she didn't understand. But Olive couldn't laugh. Not only was she unable to laugh, but every word Gurley said brought back memories of the past, times that had become memories. The time that I thought would last forever was suddenly interrupted. This is not a pain that can be laughed off. At that time, I was thinking that there are countless slums in the busy empire, and the number of children in the same situation as you is dozens or even hundreds of times. It is impossible for me to reach out and save everyone. Most of the time, I just watch with cold eyes. That's all. But there's no telling. You and Yat are people I happen to reach out to, and your life trajectories will undoubtedly change. The only place you can go if you follow me is the Holy See. Sometimes I'm wondering which kind of life the children need, between the orphanage and the Holy See. Olive, do you think you are happy now? I believe I have found the goal of life. This is the gift you gave me, Senior Gurley. Olive raised the corner of his mouth bitterly. I think it should be called happiness. I am used to it now. The identity of the Holy See is over. The premise is that Senior Gurley is still here. Orfeel, I didn't want you to take this kind of life for granted. In fact, I took you out of the slums so that you could find your own life goals, instead of following me, and my experience naturally applies to you. I temporarily placed you in the Holy See just because I couldn't find anyone who could take care of the child. But at that time you said you wanted to stay by my side, and I just thought that at least this was not the case. It was a bad thing, so I agreed to it. Looking back now, I wish I had thought more about it at that time. Oliver was originally just a shadow created by the rapid development of the Bis Empire, an orphan in the slums, living a petty theft and fearful life like other children abandoned by their families. Every day I had to eat one meal but not the next, and I didn't even know if I would be awake enough to face the next day. Until one day, she reached out to Gurley, who happened to come here to perform the mission of the Holy See. After several twists and turns, she was adopted by him and brought back to the Holy See as his adopted daughter. As long as they are not illegal immigrants of a different race or exiles, ordinary abandoned children can obtain the same rights as ordinary citizens after having a guardian. After that, Gurley taught her common sense as an ordinary person and how to fight. Because if you want to stay by my side, you must reach the same level as me. At that time, Gurley just wanted to motivate Oliver to work harder, so he told her this. And Oliver showed her astonishing talent as she wished. Perhaps it was the hard work in the slums that gave her early training that ordinary people could not experience. However, a month before she was to be awarded the uniform of the Blue Knight, she received a mission to search for members of the Nemesis Society. It was her first time working with Gurley, the designated captain, and it was also her last mission before being promoted to the Blue Knight, so she attached great importance to that operation. However, due to various factors, the mission failed. Gurley took all the mistakes made by Orfeel on him and quit the Holy See. There was no resistance to Orfeel's promotion. 1 month after Gurley left the Holy See, he became the Blue Knight and stood in the position where Gurley once stood. Orfeel, you haven't thought about getting any fame or fortune, right? If you didn't want to stay by my side, you don't have to work so hard. It doesn't matter if you don't become a Knight of the Holy See. To be honest, I still want to advise you now, Olafel, if staying in the Holy See doesn't make sense to you, you can do what I did at that time. But what about the child? Orfeel pointed his thin sword at Ya beside Gree. Not to be outdone, Ya stared at the flashing sword tip with sharp eyes. The child smells of blood, so that's it? Got what you call an ordinary life. Ya is a little different from you. She had already done a lot of things she shouldn't have done when she was in the slums. The local law enforcement bureau treated her as a dangerous person, but this child is very strong. The law enforcement bureau said that there is nothing we can do with her. Gurley's cigarette had burned down to the filter. He threw the burned out cigarette holder onto the broken tiles at his feet and stamped it out with his feet. I brought her out to wash away the smell of blood on her body. But it seems difficult for people like us to strive for an ordinary life in such a world. Gurry said meaningfully. He looked at Oliver and said, it's the same for you and me. In this case, wouldn't Senior Gurley be too irresponsible? He clearly gave me hope and yet made me keep waiting with hope. Now you are in the same position as me. Even if I am not by your side, you can survive on your own strength. I just opened a door for you. Orfeel's hand holding the rapier began to tremble, but she shook her head vigorously as if to abandon the hesitation in her heart. But Senior Gurley is different. Even if to Senior Gurley I am just someone I happen to save, you are the whole world to me. Sensing the anger bursting out from Orfeel's body, Ya bowed her waist slightly. The difference between her and Orfeel is that the slum she lives in is more cruel than Orfeel, and the children there have more or less other people's blood on their hands. Orfeel swooped down with her sword in hand. Her goal was originally to take Grydia away, but she seemed to have impulsively put Grydia in her line of attack. At the same time, Ya swayed her long silver-gray hair and came into contact with her. The continuous stabs of the rapier left a blue trail in the air, instantly biting Ya's defense from different angles. The rapier and sharp claws splashed out magic fragments of two different colors in less than a few seconds of attack and defense. Orfeel used a preemptive rainstorm attack to temporarily suppress Miyabi, who was on the defensive. Finally, Ya's sharp dynamic vision caught the gap between the piercing rainstorm, and dense serrations appeared on the surface of the blood-red claws. The rapier was turned into a pair of toothed pliers just before it hit Ya, and there was a slight change in Orfeel's expression. And Ya took advantage of this gap to use her petite body to jump up with the rapier as a fulcrum, and flip to Olive's back in the blink of an eye. It is most taboo to expose your back to the enemy in battle. At this time, Ya has completely reversed Olafika's previous advantage. The reason why Yaoi is regarded as a dangerous person by the local law enforcement bureau is because she possesses the natural fighting ability of vampires that is far stronger than that of humans. But the sharp claw that Miyabi thrust out when he landed was blocked by the sword turned over his shoulder. At this time, Orfeel just raised the sword with his backhand after getting out of Ya's control, without even looking back at Ya's attack trajectory. The rapier skill that Wei 11 called very powerful was not exaggerated because of admiration. When using his backhand sword to pick away Ya's sharp claws, Orfeel suddenly turned around with his left foot as the center of the circle, and the blue magic light wrapped in the rapier blade shone brighter and brighter. Illusion sword technique, polygonal hurricane. It is also a stab with a thin sword measured in milliseconds, but this time the sword wind is integrated with the natural element of wind, and at the same time, it turns into a tornado wrapped around a sharp swirling blade from an unknown direction and stabs in the direction of Ya. Unable to dodge, Ya could only cross her arms and try to build a magic barrier to block the wind blade, but how could the hastily built defense be able to withstand the full blow of the Blue Knight? Ya crashed into the power distribution room not far from the top of the tower like a blown balloon. Stop it, Oliver Gree stopped calmly, probably because he knew Ya's self-healing ability, so he wasn't so worried. You've seen it, right? It's the same child I brought out from that kind of place. You are already much stronger than Yat. Even if Ya has the smell of blood, she will gradually get closer to ordinary children in ordinary life. If she doesn't want to fight, I will not let her get into contact with fighting. This is the most correct thing to do after reaching out to her. Oliver looked blankly at Ya, who was easily knocked away by her. She had no idea that the little girl who could stay with Gilai would be so vulnerable. Orpheal, I have never forced you to stay in the Holy See. If you want to come back, I welcome you at any time. Now I still have some business contacts with the Holy See, so I know that you and another person have arrived here. Do you still remember the Nemesis Society that we investigated together before? Gurley noticed a subtle change in the expression on Orpheal's side face. It seems that I may have guessed it right. The power to make other people's countries so troubled is obtained from their hands, right? Oliver returned to his usual smile and slowly turned around. The passionate emotions before could no longer be seen in the blue eyes, only calmness mixed with sadness. My compatibility with the mimicry magic suit seems to be surprisingly compatible. She unbuttoned her blouse and her short skirt fell lightly to her feet. Even Gurley couldn't help but frown at her sudden move. This is a power that uses the life and magic power of all mimic magic equipment holders in the kingdom of Tiberi as nutrients. It can't be stopped anymore. Finally, he untied his scarf and opened his clothes, exposing his pure white body to the windy air. But Gurley didn't look away. He was not attracted by the girl's fair skin, but by the plant seed-like thing embedded in her chest. If we want to maintain the ability of this mimetic magic suit, we can't do it without reaching this level. Any magic machine needs the magic power of the holder to guide it, and I am its control source. But now it seems, it is difficult to control this mimicry magic outfit because it has absorbed far more magic power than I can control. Or feel. At this time, Gurley showed a nervous expression for the first time. Slender plant vines grew out of the seed buried in Oliaphiel's chest. They were the same type of plant vines that were spreading to the surrounding area. They wrapped her whole body in them in the blink of an eye. The actions of the mimicry magic equipment don't just stop there. Based on the host, the plant vines that continuously emerged grew into a giant tree reaching the sky on the top of this minaret. As the core, Orefhel was restrained on the top of the giant tree as if he was being tortured, exposed. The body from the chest down was buried in the tree trunk. This is troublesome. As if in response to the loss of control of the magic power control source of Orefhel, the plant vines and blood-sucking thorns in the entire royal capital all became active, swarming and squirming like some legendary tentacle monster. Endless Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 438. Buildings that were overwhelmed by thick vines and collapsed continued to appear, and the overall view of the capital of the Tiberi kingdom was changing every second. At this time, the military motorcycle carrying Ling and Lanming had already broken through numerous obstacles and arrived at the broadcast tower. Only by visiting the tallest building in the royal capital in person can one feel the oppression of standing firm in such adversity. 3 slanted columns with a diameter of nearly 10 meters support the body of the broadcast tower. Now the slanted columns are also surrounded by emerald green vines, but only to the extent that cracks appear on the surface. They had already noticed the changes that had occurred in various parts of the royal capital. Lanming also discovered the core fluctuations of the mimicry magic equipment that had been hidden deeply through the vision of the candle dragon. It was located on the top of the broadcast tower directly above them. Can you use your magic costume to destroy it now? It can't be done. Lanming predicted the result without trying. Although that point may be the core of the mimicry magic outfit, it is just a little more prominent than the surrounding magic fluctuations. Those vines all emit the same magic fluctuations. Even if it resonates with or feels magic power fluctuations, it will be interfered by the same magic power fluctuations around it. It seems I can only go up and stop her in person. Ling, besides Oliver, there seem to be 2 other kinds of magic power there. Is there anyone else there besides us? Ling's expression became serious. The only people who are still with her now are probably people from the Nemesis Society, including her. There are 3. It's personal. Whether it is Will or Misty, each of them has skills that are no less than Ling. Oliver has rapier skills that are comparable to Ling, so just dealing with her might be too much. What should I do? Do you want to go up? Lan Ming knew that the reason for Ling's hesitation was himself. Even Ling feels that they are a tough opponent, and Lan Ming will not be brave and think that he can defeat them as long as he works hard. Ling is indeed worried about Lan Ming's problem, but it's not that he doesn't believe in her strength, but that he can already get a glimpse of the winning rate of this battle just from 2 versus 3. Let's go, she finally made up her mind and took Lan Ming's hand. If we don't go, no one will be able to stop them. If that fool were here, he would definitely say this. The action of holding hands is not a sign of intimacy. What I really want to say is just to feel that I am not alone, and to soothe my violently beating heart by being connected. In fact it is. After doing this, each of them could feel the other's uneasy trembling, and then they laughed in unison as if they were self-deprecating. Well, it's up to us to stop him. If he were here, he would definitely leave us all behind and rush forward alone. We won't leave him such a chance this time. Don't go too far, Your Highness Princess. Isn't it bullying to use this kind of name at this time? Unintentionally, the previous nervousness was gone, and Ling and Lan Ming ran into the gate of the tallest building in the capital, hand in hand. On the top of the minaret, Gurley and Yajeng are working together to rescue Orfeel from the body of the giant tree in the sky, where the magic is manifested. Ya's bloody long claws were still extremely sharp, cutting off the blood-sucking thorns, biting like poisonous snakes. Even if it bites her body, the vampire's blood will turn into a sharp blade and crush it. But Gurley just used his bare hands, not so. His fists are now blessed with some kind of special power, like the smoke rising from a cigarette, wrapping Gurley's iron fists. Holy fist! Gurley smoothly used his fists to strike first and combo. He used footwork that was somewhat different from the impression given by his burly figure to quickly sideways and dodge between the successive incoming vine tentacles. He surrounded the iron fists of disgust and blasted away those magic products. Crushed into ashes. Speaking only with his fists, Gurley fully explained what it means to be a real man. If he hadn't been concerned that the spire was on the verge of collapse, Gurley would have simply used all his strength to move the battlefield to the deserted streets. Not only are the vine tentacles numerous in number, but they can also regenerate, creating the illusion of inexhaustible use. It's impossible to get close at all if this continues. It's really a harsh requirement to only target the vital points without hurting Orfeel. However, I have promised Nia and Ya that I will not pick up weapons again. The Blue Knight, once the strongest in the Holy See, was able to move forward and retreat freely despite the threat of destroying the entire city even without weapons. During the Moonflower Festival at Frost Moon Academy, he led Yaqiang to break into the tightly guarded Petak prison of the Bis Empire, and the release of Veer and Misty who were imprisoned in it basically relied on his strength. We can only put aside Orfeel's safety for the time being. In this case, we can only see if we can remove this tree. Ya seemed to sense Gurley's entangled determination, and used her sharp claws to cut off the blood-sucking thorns around her and then retreated. Gurley clasped his hands into his fists, and the smoke-like magic power surged instantly. He raised his clasped fists high and slammed them to the ground. The soaring magic power rolled up the broken tiles and rubble into the air, roaring straight into the thick tree trunk. The vine tentacles and blood-sucking thorns along the way were sucked into the violent torrent of magic power and smashed to pieces. The lower part of the trunk showed irregular and huge circular holes as if they were hollowed out, but they were quickly filled with regenerated tissue. Sure enough, if everything is not destroyed, it will keep regenerating. Gurley had already noticed it when he smashed the vine tentacles. In order to win this battle, Orfeel, who has become the core of the mimicry magic outfit, has to be sacrificed. Ling endured her inner uneasiness and stared at the numbers displayed on the elevator as they gradually increased. Violent vibrations continued to come from the top of the tower, and even the slowly rising elevator was affected and swayed left and right, making a mechanical noise as it struggled to climb higher. Although I know that sitting on something like this at this time is asking for death, but what can I do without air conditioning? The elevator shook suddenly again, and Ling finally couldn't help but hold her arms and spit out the resentment in her heart. To climb the 400-meter-high broadcasting tower, it was impossible to climb the stairs, so they had no choice but to try the elevator. "Master, please be quiet. The princess of the Ela family needs to concentrate. If she had been distracted even a little bit, we might all be buried with this elevator. Can I ask you to say something kind at this time? The elevator is also a magical machine, and Lanming uses Candle Dragon Molten Gold to monitor its status at all times." There was another vibration, and the elevator shook the most violently in its history. Ling. Is it really like this? There were obviously 2 floors left before reaching the top floor, but unexpectedly, the problem they were most worried about happened. Ling no longer had the time to worry about whether it was because Guanjun's sword said something unlucky. According to their pre-planned escape plan, when she saw the next floor through the transparent elevator door, Ling drew her knife and opened the elevator door, grabbed Lanming's hand and rolled from the elevator to the new one. On the floor. If Ling's movements had been slower for 1 second, he would have fallen to the ground along with the elevator with the broken cable. The roar of the explosion came from the corridor, and the flames rushed upward through the corridor, but under this situation, they had no intention to appreciate the rare fireworks. "Ling, which floor is this? There's still 1 floor left. It's much better now than climbing up the stairs. You must maintain an optimistic attitude in everything, otherwise you will really be forced to collapse." Ling has already fully mastered the secret of adjusting his mentality. "That's good. Is the scenery outside tilted?" As the shaking continues to intensify, the seemingly immovable tallest building no longer seems to be pointing straight to the sky. Seeing that Ling didn't answer, Lanming obediently shut his mouth. At this time, none of them wanted to say any more unlucky words, so they turned around and ran towards the stairs. Lanming seemed more excited than scared. Whether she was running wildly through the streets on a motorcycle, or escaping from the elevator, and now running along the spherical observation floor aisle regardless of her image, all of these were things that she could not imagine when she was Her Royal Highness. "They're there!" Lanming shouted while running and pointing to the floor-to-ceiling glass of the spherical sightseeing floor. Through the broken floor-to-ceiling glass window, he saw the emerald green vine tentacles hanging down from the upper floor. "It's up there too. It must be the monster on the top of the tower we saw when we came here, the mastermind of this commotion. What on earth did that woman summon? Why does the Nemesis Society always like to create such big things? Complaints are complaints, neither Ling nor Lanming can stop here." The hanging vine tentacles seemed to have no consciousness and did not notice Ling and Lanming running in the aisle. But they still squirmed and crashed into the floor with their thick bodies, and part of the structure of the sightseeing floor suddenly collapsed. Ling and Lanming immediately hid behind the nearest support column. The group of vine tentacles seemed to have just accidentally broken something. They didn't care about the collapsed sightseeing floor at all, and slowly squirmed away. Just an inadvertent movement can cause such great damage. If it happens again, this floor may really not be able to support it. Ling gritted his teeth and immediately stood up from the back of the support pillar after the vine tentacles left. "There is also a first floor." "I'm sorry, Ling, it just seemed like." Lanming held the ground with one hand and showed a painful expression when he stood up. His shaky back rested on the support column. Ling immediately saw that Lanming's foot was injured when he just avoided it. "It's just 1 floor away. I'll carry you up." "Ling, you go up alone first. I can support you even here." Lan Ming just didn't want to be a burden to Ling because of her foot injury, but she didn't expect how dangerous it would be to stay here. I don't have time to spend here with you. Just like what Ika had done to Ling and Lan Ming, Ling couldn't help but squat down with her back to Lan Ming, forcefully held her hand and asked her to lie on his back, and then stood holding her legs. Got up. With the strength of a girl, Ling could only walk quickly at most, and it was impossible to run completely ignoring Lan Ming's weight. But it is even more impossible to keep Lan Ming here. If he wants to leave, everyone must leave together. Ling learned from Ika that the toughest and most effective approach is to be tough when others reject your kindness, and Lan Ming became a victim of this tough approach for the second time. Thanks. Lying on Ling's back, Lan Ming whispered very embarrassedly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. And La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 439. The kingdom's army noticed something strange when Orfeel, as the core, lost control, but they were caught off guard by the sudden appearance of plant vines. Neither the ordinary airport nor the dedicated airport can be used now, so there is no fleet that can rush to the broadcast tower to carry out the attack. Support. After the giant tree in the sky was attacked by Gurli, it seemed to have lost its mind and waved the vine tentacles it grew, even affecting the streets below the spire, accelerating the collapse of the tallest building in the royal capital. The frantic vine tentacles seemed to regard Gurli and Yadu in front of them as nothing, and just vented their anger blindly. Yeah, my feelings for Oliver are the same as my feelings for you. But she probably can't hear these words anymore. Do you want to do it, Dad? If this was the BZ Empire, they might be able to find some way, but if it's the Tiburai Kingdom, we can't expect them to be able to help. Now we can only let Orefhel bear the mistakes she made, and she can't do it again. More people were sacrificed to burden her. Yi stayed away from Jali knowingly. At the same time, the smoke magic surrounding Gurli's fists became more intense, and a golden phantom nearly 4 meters tall appeared behind him. It was my substitute who punished you. I'm sorry, Oliver, I couldn't save you. Gurli's magic power expanded rapidly, and the color of the golden phantom gradually became thicker. The next blow will definitely cut off the top of this minaret completely. At this time, the iron door on the top floor was suddenly knocked open by the shoulder of the blonde girl who broke in. The already shaky iron door crashed to the ground under her impact, and beside her was a purple-haired girl who was holding onto the doorframe. The first thing that caught the eyes of the two girls was naturally the unnaturally lush giant tree. When they saw it from a distance through the window of the motorcycle, they didn't feel the impact. The two girls who broke in also attracted Gurli's attention, and the swelling magic power disappeared. Uncle Gurli. Ling called out the man's name with hesitation. That man was no different from the impression left in everyone's mind when he left Pufa town a year ago. Is he someone you know? Well, but... Lan Ming, who could only stand up barely holding onto the doorframe, asked Ling cautiously. Obviously, Yaya also turned her attention to Ling and Lan Ming, who suddenly broke in. She probably regarded them as enemies who were blocking Jali's plan. She raised her blood-red claws. Yeah, they are not enemies. Gurli put away his magical power and glanced at the giant tree in the sky that was showing its teeth and claws. Fortunately, the giant tree had not noticed the commotion at its feet at this time, and did not regard the girls who rashly broke into sight as targets of attack. Miss Ling, I won't say any more greetings. You have grown a lot during this period, and I understand a little bit. Now that Princess Yila has strengthened you, can you chop down that tree? Neither party bothered to reminisce about the past. After recognizing each other, Gurli made a request to Ling and Lan Ming. There should have been more questions to solve, such as why Gurli is here, what is his relationship with Oliver, who is the unseen girl next to him, and do they know about Nemesis? Association, will there be new troubles after cutting down the tree, etc. But apart from these problems, Ling still wanted to believe in Gurley, because Gurley and Nia had taken care of everyone like family. Please, you two, I want to rescue Oliver. Gurley bowed his head to the two girls solemnly, and Ling, who was surrounded by many questions, finally chose to believe it. Lan Ming, can you do it? No problem. Although Lan Ming doesn't know Gurley's identity yet. But since it was Ling's request, he should be someone he could trust. Her foot seemed to be twisted, and it would be difficult to stand up without something to support her, so she knelt down holding onto the doorframe. The gorgeous golden coat of arms shone brightly, and Lan Ming felt a touch of warmth in the golden pupil of his right eye. For the first time, Ling received the full blessing of Lan Ming's candle dragon molten gold. That feeling was not that magic power from the outside flowed into the light flame sword, but that the existence of the light flame sword itself had increased several times, but there was still no sense of disobedience in holding the sword in hand. Even if he faced an opponent like a fourth-level monster, Ling was confident that he could defeat it in one fell swoop. Can I use my full strength? She finally confirmed to Gurley that the brilliance of the original elements wrapped around the red gold blade, mixing and blending. Well, chop that tree down to the roots. Gurley's golden phantom also started to move along with him. Leave Olafil to me. I see. The majestic magic power gathered by the light flame sword was released in an instant, and the original elemental storm wrapped around the raised red gold blade rushed straight into the sky, piercing the gathering clouds. Perhaps feeling the threat of death from the magic power fluctuations of the light flame sword, the giant tree in the sky turned its attention to Ling. The vine tentacles rushed towards the blonde girl holding the sword with overwhelming momentum, and before touching her body, Ling slashed down the blade of light that merged with the full strength of the two of them. Elemental control, phantom star destruction. The original elemental storm split the giant tree from top to bottom like a sharp blade of light, and the overwhelming vine tentacles dissipated naturally without even being caught in the storm. The moment Ling swung down the blade, Gurley, a golden phantom appeared behind him, rushed into the storm without hesitation. The surging magic power not only split the giant tree in the sky, but also the sides of the broadcast tower to the center of the concentric circles lost their original steel structure, showing shocking traces of melting. All that was left before their eyes were falling debris and fallen leaves burning with elemental flames. They have lost the ability to regenerate, and will probably dissipate together with the raging plant vines and blood-sucking thorns in the capital in the near future. Gurley did not suffer any obvious injuries. He fell back to the ground with the naked upper body Orpheal in his arms. Being exposed to the full blows of Ling and Lan Ming and still able to escape unscathed, Gurley's hidden strength is becoming more and more doubtful. The seed-like mimicry magic outfit on Olafil's chest turned into powder and drifted away in the wind, and she still closed her eyes tightly. Ji Li took off his coat and put it on her body, and Ya, who had been watching from behind, walked over. Ling took back the light flame sword and quickly ran to Lan Ming, who was kneeling by the door. The golden pupil in his right eye dissipated, and Lan Ming showed a strong smile. Except for the slight fatigue she felt after being highly concentrated, this level of assistance did not bring any more consumption to her. And in order to prevent Ling's destructive power from spreading beyond the broadcast tower, Lan Ming carefully adjusted the magic output of the light flame sword. Uncle Gurley, why would you? I used to be the Blue Knight of the Holy See, but I have retired for a long time. Gurley stood up with Oliafil in his arms. I am responsible for what happened now. Oliafil is here for she used this method to attract me. I will make her repay her well. This explanation has answered most of Ling's doubts. At least I can feel more at ease now that I know that Gurley is not from the same group as the Nemesis Society. It's over here, but it seems like it's not over outside yet. Gurley turned around and looked down at the entire royal capital from the top of the building more than 400 meters high. The plant vines and blood-sucking thorns that had swallowed up the entire royal capital did not dissipate because of Orpheus' defeat, and their proliferation rate did not slow down. And La Silver Machine. Author, Muse Hiking. Chapter 440. Lan Ming first noticed the airship flying straight from the sky to the broadcast tower. At a time when both civilian airports and private airports have been destroyed by mimicry magic equipment that emerged from the ground, it is impossible for an airship to take off in the royal capital. However, from the appearance, the aerial boat is indeed a model belonging to the Tiburai Kingdom's military, so it seems that it must have flown here from somewhere outside the royal capital. Probably attracted by the sharp blade of light that dispersed the dark clouds, the airship belonging to the kingdom's army unwaveringly aimed at the tilted broadcast tower, and finally landed staggeringly on the crack cut by the sword of light. At this time, Ling and Lan Ming thought that at most they were just the kingdom's troops sent by the king to help. Now that the situation here has basically stabilized, the only thing left to do is to hand over the mastermind of the incident, Olafil, to the kingdom's army, and wait until she wakes up to find out how to remove the ability to mimic the magic suit. The cabin door was opened on the side of the airship, and the folding boarding ladder was slowly lowered. When they saw the two people coming out of the airship, Ling unconsciously stood up from Lan Ming's side and ran toward him step by step, gradually speeding up her pace. Ika, Liu Yin. The mood at this moment was undoubtedly exciting, but Ling didn't do anything after walking up to the two of them. She just wanted to confirm that they were right in front of her and softly called out their names. I'm back, Ling. Ika, who was the first to walk down the boarding stairs, responded to Ling's call, and his tone was calmer than expected. Looking over Ling's shoulder, Ika looked at Lan Ming, who was sitting on the ground not far away. Ika nodded to her, and Lan Ming responded with a smile. Is Uncle Girly here? Sorry, this matter has something to do with me, so I came uninvited. Girly downplayed the fierce battle that nearly flattened the tallest building in the royal capital. Perhaps to him, a battle of that level was really nothing. Liu Yan then stepped off the airship and recognized Girly, whom he had met once in Pufa town, and the girl he was holding in his arms. I'm sorry. She walked straight to Girly and asked him to return the girl in a business-like tone. Orpheus wants me to take her back to the Holy See. Girly had resigned before Liu Yan and Wei 11 joined the Holy See, and Oliver had never mentioned Girly to Liu Yan. No wonder she didn't know that Girly was actually her senior. Is she Orpheus? Ika patted Ling's shoulder, then walked past her, and came to Gli and Orefhel, who had his eyes closed tightly. She may be the same as Nemesi. She has some connections with the SI Association, and I need her. We should be able to find clues about that group of people from her. Ika. Liu Yan had no choice but to temporarily put aside her negotiations with Jali, and patiently tried to persuade Ika. I understand your current mood, but Oliver has not been expelled from the Holy See, and it must be dealt with by the Holy See. Otherwise it will cause intensification of conflicts between the kingdom and the Holy See. You should be able to understand this consequence, right? However, Ika quickly pulled out two guns without warning, pointing one at Girly and the other at Liu Yan. I said, I can't let her go. Even if there is any conflict between the kingdom and the Holy See, there will always be a way to explain it away. But now I need her, give her to me before that. Ika, you haven't looked so promising in a while. Girly just smiled disapprovingly, and everyone could tell that his words were more of a sneer than a compliment. Everyone present has already seen a glimpse of Girly's strength. If he thought about it, Ika's threat could not be called a threat at all. Uncle Girly, I believe you are on our side, so I hope you can listen to my will. Apart from this matter, everything else is easy to talk about. I also have many things to ask Oliver, and she must give an explanation to the Holy See and the Kingdom of Tiburai. I know you also have your difficulties, but I don't want to let things go wrong. It would be too troublesome to complicate things further. Ika, This person has made it very clear. If it really gets big, it's not a problem you can bear alone. If he had lowered his attitude and patiently explained to Gurley, his attitude might have been more relaxed. But it was obvious that Ika's impulsive behavior had made him very dissatisfied. The atmosphere between the three suddenly became tense. Seeing Ika suddenly make such an outrageous move, Ling's heart finally settled again. She quickly rushed to Ika and held down his hands. "What are you doing? No matter what, there is no reason to shoot at Uncle Gurley and Liu Yin, right? Even if you ask for information about those people now, there is nothing you can do about the current situation. She is the only one who can ask for clues about that group of people. If the Holy See and the Kingdom do not keep an eye on her, or there are other spies of the Nemesis Society hiding inside, there are many ways for her to escape. Even so, I have already heard about Way 11. If it is." Ling originally wanted to comfort Ika with the truth that Way 11 had not really left everyone, but Ika interrupted as if he knew what she was going to say. "I have heard about Way 11 from Hitomi, and now Way 11 is sleeping in the airship." Ika did not give Ling a chance to convince him, but to save Way 11, we must find the World Tree. Before that, I have to rescue Luoluo from those people. Let Way 11 sleep for a while." As he spoke, he looked back at the empty boat that landed lonely in the corner of the top floor. "The next time I wake up, it will be the day when everyone returns home." Ika. In Ika's eyes looking back, Ling saw the inner heart hidden under his impulsiveness. The words to blame him came to her lips but she couldn't say them out. Surprisingly, Oleafiel, who was the most injured, woke up coughing, and the blood she coughed up stained the coat that Gurley put on her body red. It was unexpectedly lucky that Oleafer could wake up at this time. In this way, Ika no longer has to argue with Liu Yin and Jali about her stay, and if she has anything to ask, she can ask her now. Although Ika put down the muzzle aimed at Liu Yin under Ling's various dissuasion, the muzzle originally aimed at Gilai was only turned towards Oleafiel in his arms. "Tell me, where are Mish and Komaki? They should still be alive, right?" Oleafer had just experienced the pain that only he could experience, and there was still a hazy color in his blue eyes. "Orfiel, if you know anything, tell this kid now." Glee also advised Orfiel from the side. "Now, whether you want it or not, you must break away from the Nemesis Society. Sethis will decide how to deal with you. This time at least it will not be a punishment that can easily offset the sin. But no matter what the final decision is, I will never leave your side without saying anything again." "Ika, are those two people you just mentioned? Haven't they already?" Ling didn't expect to hear the name of the enemy who should have been defeated at this time, and then immediately thought of something. "Could it be that Ika when you are stuck there? Well, Komaki is definitely still alive. She took Lolo away in front of me." "What does this mean?" Ling grabbed Ika's sleeve excitedly. "Hey, what's going on, Ika? Is Luoluo over there too? Aren't you fighting with the BZ Empire's army?" "Fight?" Ling's mind was in chaos. She felt like there were more and more things she didn't know. What did Ika and the others go through on the front-line battlefield? Why did Way 11 fall into a deep sleep? And why did Ika's words keep popping up names that shouldn't have appeared here? "I only heard about the frontline intelligence that was sent back to the capital." "What?" "Do not know at all." But Ika, who knew everything, didn't think of telling herself those things first and then taking matters into her own hands. This made Ling feel a faint pain deep in his heart. Oleafer's consciousness finally seemed to be clear. Faced with Ika's questioning, she did not answer any of the questions. He just weakly raised his hanging arm and took out a fingernail-sized glass bottle from the simple storage magic. That thing was very familiar to everyone related to the Holy See. It was the fluid base used by Liu Yin and Ika when they sneaked into the northwest area of the imperial capital in order to investigate the magic power explosion point. Concocted by the Vatican's pharmacist, it is a very convenient prop that can deploy a preset magic circle anywhere. Those two people gave me the mimicry magic equipment, but I don't know if the person you are looking for is at their place. Gurley took the glass bottle from Orpheel's hand and threw it to Ika. Ika put down the pistol and reached out to catch it. I'll go over now. Ling, you and the others stay here and wait. After the people from the Tiburai Kingdom get here, they can place Way 11. On the way here, we saw airships arranged from other places. You should be here in a while. Wait, Ika, you said you should go there now. Ling couldn't stop Ika at all, he had already smashed the glass bottle containing the fluid base on the ground. The pure white colloid draws a transfer magic circle on the ground, and then emits a faint fluorescence after activation. Ling, leave me alone and catch up with Ika. When Ling was caught between Ika's instructions and her family responsibilities, Lan Ming's voice cut off her hesitation. Unable to allow Ling to waste any more time, Ling turned around and chased Ika into the transfer magic circle where the fluorescence gradually dimmed. At this time, the shadows of airships and aviation magic ships dispatched from surrounding cities could already be seen on the horizon. The Royal Army will soon take over to deal with the aftermath of this uprising. If Ika succeeds in finding the person who created the mimicry magic outfit, the plant vines and blood-sucking thorns throughout the capital will probably lose their vitality. Ika. After learning that Way 11 was still alive, Liuyan was now most worried about Ika. In her eyes, Ika was not trying to rescue Luo and Way 11 at all, but was just giving up thinking and venting recklessly. Liuyan originally wanted to chase Ika to the lair of the Nemesis Society, but she couldn't leave Way 11's side at the same time. She could only suppress her inner impulse and calm down to complete her responsibilities as a Holy Sea Knight. Lan Ming bit his lower lip and stood up with the gravel at his hand. She knew that this level of pain would be restored immediately under the treatment of the kingdom's potion magician. Now was no longer the time to rely on others blindly. She also had something to do. It didn't take long for the troops dispatched by the Tiburai kingdom to completely blockade the broadcast tower.